ESPN 1410 Wing AM brings you 1410 Wing Live. Follow along on Facebook, on Twitter, even on our ESPN Dayton YouTube channel, and at wingam.com. We're everywhere. The biggest interviews with the biggest local and national guests. It's 1410 Wing Live with Justin Kinner.
All right, everybody, welcome in. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, live here on Dayton's ESPN radio station. And, of course, throughout the day, we like to bring you a couple interviews throughout the day that, of course, we then bring you later on in the afternoon show as well. We caught up with ESPN's Mark Adams earlier this afternoon to talk about some of the difficulties that go into scheduling on a regular season, but obviously the challenges are there even more when you take a look at what's going on right now due to the coronavirus. But I'm excited to bring on our next guest. Again, we are getting set to tip off the college basketball season here in just a few weeks. We're seeing a lot of the preseason polls come out for a lot of our local conferences as well as across the country. The Horizon League poll came out last week. Wright State coming out as the preseason number one. Loudon Love winning the Horizon League preseason player of the year. Of course, he's the reigning player of the year from last year. So we're excited to bring on our next guest. We spoke with Loudon Love yesterday. We have Wright State head basketball coach Scott Nagy joining us now. Coach, welcome in, sir. How are you?
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
I appreciate that. You've done this for a while. I think a few years. I think you're in year 2, I believe, in your coaching now. You have 25 years. You've been coaching for a while, and this is probably unlike anything you've ever experienced before. From the perspective of getting ready for a season to coaching, recruiting, scheduling, everything. This is clearly something you've never experienced before.
Yeah, I mean it's not even close, and you know the one thing about it is nobody really gains an advantage because nobody's been through it, and so we're all working through it together. And I think there's a sense of let's figure out how to just do whatever we have to do to get through this season and make it a good season. And we want to make it a meaningful one for the players more than anything. We obviously want it to be for the fans, and that's going to be a little bit more difficult to do. But from a coach's standpoint, we're doing everything we can do to try to keep things as normal for the players, give them things to look forward to, and because it's been hard on them. It just has. They've worked hard their whole lives to be good basketball players and put themselves in positions like this, and this year has been very strange for them.
I remember, when the football season was getting started, I remember just interviewing different high school football coaches in the area. When they started practices, they didn't even know if they were going to have a season. They were doing 2-a-days. They were getting all their practices in without even knowing if there'd be a season. And that could be so tough when you're trying to prepare for a season that may or may not happen. It's kind of the same for you guys. I mean, even throughout the off season, throughout the summer, I know there was a lot of restrictions, travel restrictions for some states, depending on where some of your players were from. Just rewind back to over the summer prepping for this season. What were some of those challenges like, and how did you and your staff adapt?
Yeah, it was the same way. We started July 20th, and I was thankful that our administration allowed us to get back in here because we knew that what was best for our players was to be near us and where we could control the environment instead of them being at home and maybe going to a gym they shouldn't be in or a weight room they shouldn't be in. We just can control the environment much more here and keep them safer here. And they do better here overall. We know that. And so we were happy to get them back. But it was difficult, to work out in July because there was still the thought, there may not be a season. We just don't know. We don't know when it's going to start. There were just a lot of unknowns. And when you get in those situations, it's very difficult to motivate the players.
How about recruiting? How has this impacted recruiting? Again, you brought up a good point earlier. It's no one's really experienced this, so no one has the upper hand because it's new to everybody. So everyone's taken a step backwards recruiting wise. How has the recruiting world for you guys been impacted by this?
Well, obviously it's been different. Like I told you, it's been a little nice for me because I've been home a lot. I want to think that it's good for my family that I'm home more. I hope that it is. So that's been good. But, yeah, nobody's gained an advantage. We can't go off campus. Players can't come to campus. So you just have to work hard to try to sell your program over Zoom calls like this and phone calls and just work the way you would work, except you have to watch kids through film. There just has to be more time spent doing that. But nobody's gaining an advantage in any way. And we haven't found it to be any less difficult to recruit this way than the other.
So the Horizon League schedule came out. That was a very unorthodox schedule, and of course, other similar conferences are approaching scheduling in the same manner. The same opponent, back-to-back days. There'll at least be one opponent in the conference that you will not play. What was your first initial thought when you originally heard of that model, and then when you found out that that was going to be the model moving forward? It's an interesting approach. Your thoughts?
Well, we knew that it was going to be different no matter what we did. We talked about bubbles and 4 teams going to a certain place and playing back to back to back to do it that way. We knew no matter what we did, it was going to be a different year. Again, I don't think by having this format anybody gains an advantage. I do think I do believe that it's going to be more difficult to beat a team twice, particularly back to back nights. I think if you play them once in early January and once in late February, some of the motivational edge would have been lost in terms of if you beat them the first time. But when you beat a team on a Friday night, you got to turn around and play them against Saturday. It's a little bit more difficult to do. And I look at any kind of playoff series in professional sports because we don't really face that. We usually play a team once and move on. We're not in a playoff situation where we play teams back to back nights. But you rarely see teams win, in back-to-back because the team that loses just has an advantage. They just do in terms of motivation and fire. And so I think that will be a little bit more difficult. And, then the other thing is in terms of the COVID and if people catch it and you have to shut down, or if you're okay, but the team you're playing has to shut down, I think it's going to be interesting to see just how many games we get in.
As far as the non-conference is concerned, every coach I speak to, any athletic director, everyone talks about the struggles and the frustrations in scheduling right now with all of the uncertainty out there. What's the biggest hiccup you're running to right now in trying to finalize this non-conference schedule? And are you concerned that you may not end up with maybe only a few games prepping for the Horizon League season that starts late next month?
I mean, we're still not done with it. I mean, here we are 2 weeks away from playing today, and we're still not done with our schedule. That's highly unusual. We're, it's the same things for us. When you look at a mid-major that has been successful, there's just a lot of teams that don't want to play them, and so it really hasn't been any different in that respect. And so we've been fortunate enough to pick up some games, but we're still looking for another game as it is. And we're planning on playing 20 games. We're allowed to play 27, so we have 6 games scheduled already, and we're trying to find that 7th.
Now, I mean, when you think about all the teams that are in the state of Ohio, I always talk about how great it is to live in the city. If you're a college basketball fan, there's great college basketball all over the place. A lot of people, it's easy to say, well, why don't you just play this team? This team's only 12 miles away. You have Ohio State. You have, you can go to Cincinnati or Xavier. It's too simple-minded for me just to say, well, Coach Nagy, just pick up the phone, give him a call. Why can't you just play those teams? Why is it difficult to get some of those on the schedule? Not saying it's on your end, but why are some of those matchups difficult to kind of tie down?
Well, I mean, you say that, just pick up the phone, but we do pick up the phone, but somebody else has to answer. And that's where we run into those problems. And I think if I were at some of those schools, I would think the same way. I mean, you get to a point. Again, where you play a team at a mid-major level, if say you're a Xavier or Dayton or whatever, the expectation is if you play that team, you're supposed to beat them. So really, in those terms, Wright State playing those games, we have everything to gain and nothing to lose, and they're just the opposite. They have everything to lose and nothing to gain, and it's much easier for them to play somebody maybe outside the area where there's less known about it, less excitement around the game. And so, I understand why they don't pick up that phone. I know early on when we were in Division I South Dakota State, we weren't very good. Every people were calling us, and we were getting games like crazy. And when we finally got good, and nobody would pick up the phone, and we struggled to put a schedule together, then I knew we kind of were where we wanted to be. And I think at Wright State right now, we're kind of where we want to be, where it's hard to put a schedule together.
Yeah, I remember, and this isn't a shot at the previous coach, but before you had gotten here, we were seeing a lot of Wright State, Kentucky, Wright State, Ohio State, Wright State, Cincinnati, Xavier, and so on. And you're right. It's like as the program has continued to build and get better since you've arrived and the players you've brought in, you've seen less of those. So, yes, that speaks volumes about the job that you guys have done. I want to transition now and to talk about, your roster right now. I'm excited to finally see this team get out on the floor. For one, I talked with Loudon Love yesterday. I can't believe he's a senior already. I mean, I feel like you just brought him in, but I am curious. Your vision when you brought him here and where he is at now, has he surpassed your vision of what you expected from him when he got here? Is he where you thought he would be? When you look back, again, you have another whole year with him, but where's Loudon Love and your big vision of things from when you first started recruiting him and landed him here at Wright State?
Yeah, I think the hardest guy to project is a big guy. And in particular, not only a tall guy, but a big guy like Loudon is very difficult to project. But when we recruited him, when I was at South Dakota State, we recruited him. The thing that we really liked about him were his hands. He has great hands, and I honestly wouldn't have expected that he'd be as good a ball handler as he is. He's a very good ball handler for his size, and really the thing that is hard to know when you recruit somebody is what kind of teammate they're going to be. You try to project those things. You talk to coaches, and you work as hard as you can, but you just don't know until you get here and you coach somebody how they're going to respond to coaching. But he's been, he's just been a joy to coach for sure, and he's been a great teammate. And he's one of those guys that even though he's MVP of the league, he doesn't see himself that way. Like he doesn't walk around and he doesn't have a big head. And he's probably not as selfish as I would like him to be. I would like him to be a little bit more selfish and a little bit more hungry. But I think his teammates would say that about him. He's a really good teammate.
Yeah, I could. Anytime I tried to get him to talk about himself yesterday, it was deflected right to his teammates, of course, and that's just who he is. And you're right. Just who he is on and off the floor. You have Jalen Hall. Obviously, there's some other names you're bringing back. But what about some of the new names and new roles and new situations? Talk about some of the names that we haven't heard yet that you're expecting big things from here to start the season.
Well, there's holes to fill, but I would say number one with Jalen, we expected him last year to just guard everybody's best player. He just is an extremely good defender. He's 6'7". He's an incredible athlete, and we obviously are going to want for him to continue to take on that role. But he'll end up scoring more for us this year. His offense has improved. He's finishing better, and so we've been really excited about him. And then, there's a guy like Tim Finke who sat out last year, transferred from Grand Canyon from Champaign, Illinois, and he's 6'6". He's physical, very aggressive player, and sometimes I think people would tend to try to compare him with Bill because they're about the same size. Bill's probably an inch shorter or so, and Tim is probably not as polished offensively as Bill, but he's a better defender. Right now, I'd say he's definitely one of our top defenders, and we're excited about that. I think, we probably will see more of Grant this year. There's a chance for us to play Grant Basile and Loudon together and be bigger. And I think overall with our team, we're probably going to play bigger and be more physical, play a little bit slower. We may not score as many points, but we should be better defensively and a better rebounding team. And I think like Trey Calvin, who played a little bit for us last year as a freshman, has a chance to really see a lot of minutes for us at the point guard position. So, we're excited about that for sure. And then, there's some younger guys, a guy named Alex Huberts from Grafton, Wisconsin. There's a very good shooter, 6'3", that has a chance to see some time for us, as well as Andrew Wellage, who's a 6'7" point guard from Greenburgh, Indiana. And so, there's still a lot. We're deep. We had one player sitting out last year from Cleveland, Andre Harris, who's really made a big jump, which you would expect between the freshman and sophomore year, even though he's still going to be a freshman. And so he's probably our best driver, very physical guard. So we're very deep. There's still a lot of players that are a little bit unproven that are going to get thrown in the fire this year. We're very young. We have Loudon and James Manns and Jalen Hall, and then everybody else in our team are freshmen and sophomores. So we're still a very young team.
All right, Wright State head men's basketball coach Scott Nagy, good enough to join us here this afternoon. Send us out with this, Coach. Your definition of a successful 2020-2021 season is what?
Well, still for us, it's winning, no question about it. We want to win the league. We want to figure out how to do that, and it's going to be unusual, I think, this year because I think it's going to be hard for everybody to play the same amount of games and how they're going to figure that out. So that'll be interesting. But the other thing I would say is just being able to keep our players healthy for sure. And they've done a good job of that. You know, I understand around the country it's really picked up, but our players have done a good job of taking care of themselves.
All right, good stuff. And I'm happy to hear that. And I'm happy to hear that you and your family are doing well. You guys continue to stay safe and stay healthy as well. Wright State head basketball coach Scott Nagy. Coach, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. You take care.
Thank you.